As everyone's coming back, I would say if there's still any tables that were joined together for the BOFs, maybe we could separate them because we don't have to do that for the afternoon. Could be helpful. I know people are still trickling back in. Nick? No. I'm Mike. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna do just a small little thing, and then I got your slides here too.
I'm here. I'm on time.
You're good. How many people here work in an agile fashion or on an agile team? Raise your hand. Everybody, yeah. So us organizers are agile too, so much so that we took your feedback and we talked about it from the first half, and we made some on-the-fly adjustments for the second half. So it works. The process works. So for the afternoon, it's a lot like the morning, though we're not doing the BOFs. We're just doing more lightning talks and sponsor talks. And then at the end, we're going to have a panel discussion with our speakers. So yeah, we'll have lightning talk 3 with discussion. But we extended it, so now our break is 15 minutes instead of optimistic 5 minutes, especially because this break happens when there is coffee available this time. So woo! That's why I was like, all right, 15 minutes is definitely needed for that. So we appreciate your feedback and learning what everybody needs. Before we dive into that, though, Nick was just here. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. We have Nick from the DA here to talk to us about Ripple Makers. I got his slides available and all ready to go.
Thank you very much. How's everyone's days been so far? Good? Awesome. I hope that you have time for coffee later when there's coffee available. I'm sorry to hear that. That's rough. So yeah, like I said, I'm Nick from the DA. I'm the product marketing manager at the DA, and I'm here to talk about the Ripple Makers program. So the Ripple Makers program is a group of passionate individuals supporting the DA's mission of driving adoption and innovation of Drupal as a digital public good. The Ripple Makers program supports the work that the DA is doing to advance Drupal as a common good, harnessing the collective generosity and commitment from a group of people. Here are a few things that the Ripple Makers program supports. So obviously engineering. You can't do a lot of work if we don't have servers available. So server availability, also security, the money going towards improving advocacy as well. Recently, we were actually featured in the Digital Public Goods Alliance annual report. That was really cool. Check that out on our social media channels, as well as Cyber Resiliency Act advocacy in Europe. There's currently legislation that can potentially affect open source in Europe. And so we need funds to continue that advocacy as well. The program also supports things like DrupalCon, which we are at, things like scholarships that can help fund more people to attend these events, engagement, and so much more. I'm going to show a quick video to talk a little bit more about the Ripple Makers program.
Hello, my name is Faye Loren. I'm here in Vancouver, BC, in Canada, and I work as a delivery manager for a company called Renaissance Electronics. They use Drupal as their CMS of choice. I'm also on the Drupal Association Board of Directors and one of the 2 community elected seats, and I am one of the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion Initiative leads. So as you can tell, I think about Drupal a lot. I spend a lot of time talking about Drupal, working with other Drupalists, and sometimes I have conversations with people who aren't familiar with open source, and they always ask the same questions. They're like, what do you mean you built a career on something that's free? And I sort of explain I mean, at least for me, I think of it more like a gift. It's not free. It's something that has been gifted to me and to us by community members like me over the past 20 years, people who have put their time, energy, and resources into something that they believe should be readily available to anybody who wants to learn, anybody who wants to use it. 10 years later, I've been building my skills, building my career. I now have a great job and a comfortable life. And this is my opportunity, one of my opportunities to give back. So I do contribute my time. I work with the community doing community leadership things. I do sessions, but I'm also a ripple maker because my small monthly contribution is going to help the Drupal Association with their mission to create an impactful digital public good. So if you, like me, have a comfortable life and Drupal to thank for it, I invite you to join me and be a ripple maker.
Awesome. So if you want to learn more information or you're ready to sign up right now, please scan the QR code or go to d.org/association/ripple makers to learn more information. I hope you all have a great day, and I'm around. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
How many people in the room are already members of the Drupal Association, now known as Ripple Makers?
To repeat the question, how many people in the room are already ripple makers? Yeah. Woo! Yeah. The community summit's next door to us, and we have to show them up. So, woo! Hey. Take that, John Picozzi. He's the one leading it. We have a rivalry going on right now with our summits. All right, next up, our next lightning talk by Joe Parsons and Chris Green on Distribution Maintainers Anonymous. What's next in the age of recipes?
All right, we want to welcome everybody to Distribution Maintainers Anonymous.
Hi, my name is Chris Green, and I'm a distribution maintainer. Hi, my name is Chris Green, and I'm a distribution maintainer.
Hi, Chris. Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm a distribution maintainer.
Hi, Joe.
So sorry for that. We did kind of want to make this sort of a support group kind of thing, but we are here to talk about distributions and what the future holds for people like us that are maintainers of distributions, and we're hopefully, if anybody else falls in that camp, hopefully we can be a nice support to you today. So I'm Joe Parsons, this is Chris Green. We're developers at the University of Arizona. We've been actively involved in building and maintaining distributions for our institution for over 10 years. And we feel like we've actually been pretty successful at delivering our...
Sorry, can you please define distribution for anyone in the room like me who doesn't know what that is?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So we've been using distributions in our opinion, we've been able to successfully deliver our web experience platform across a large number of sites at our institution, we feel like successfully for a long time. And so when we see things like Drupal CMS and recipes, we kind of wonder, like, we thought from our perspective, what we had was working pretty well. And so we're a little confused sometimes by what we see going on in the community, although like we are also really impressed with a lot of things going on with recipes and Drupal CMS. We have some fundamental concerns about why distributions are apparently bad. And so there was this quote that Mike Anello posted on LinkedIn recently where he asked if, just kind of polled the community, is Drupal CMS a distribution? And this got a lot of really interesting responses. One of the responses that got our attention was this response from Mike Potter, who you may know. Mike was the longtime maintainer of the features module in Drupal 7 and also a maintainer of more than one popular distribution, including Open Atrium. And so when Mike Potter says, if I was going to rebuild Atrium today, it would be with recipes, that definitely gets our attention as distribution maintainers. It definitely kind of raises this question in our mind: are distributions already dead? Are they obsolete? We've also noticed in recent years, as kind of Drupal, as recipes, the distributions and recipes initiative has kind of gotten off the ground, especially with the advent of Drupal CMS. We've noticed an increase of what we would consider kind of like this negative sentiment for distributions and install profiles. And like I said, for us, that's always been kind of confusing because we feel like for us, they meet our needs pretty well. And I think part of the reason that there's that kind of disconnect between how we feel and what we're observing in the Drupal community is that, for a lot of folks, they need to be able to work with outside agencies, with vendors, to build a solution. And they don't want to be locked into that solution. They don't want to be tied to something that may or may not be maintained long term. And similarly, an agency isn't interested in strapping that kind of constraint on their client. But for us, because we are in a position where we are actively maintaining and building a solution for our institution, from our perspective, that kind of lock-in negative aspect of distributions has always kind of been a positive. We want those sites to be locked into our distribution because we want to be able to update them. And we're going to talk about how we do that. So, in answer to your question, before we can really kind of dig into this question of whether distributions are dead or whether they're obsolete, we do feel like it would be helpful to break down what a distribution is and what an install profile is. And there's a lot of confusion surrounding these concepts in the Drupal community, I would say. So if you were to walk out in this hall and ask 5 different people what a distribution is, I bet money that you would get 5 very different answers. And similarly, if you ask someone the difference between an install profile and a distribution, I bet you'd have a hard time finding someone that could give you a succinct answer. And I would fall into the camp of someone that wouldn't have been able to give you a succinct answer pretty recently. So we did a little research on this, and from the perspective of Drupal core, an install profile is an extension type. It's like an extension type, like a module is an extension type and a theme is an extension type. These are things that can extend the functionality of Drupal core. So install profiles can do all the same kinds of things modules can do, but they also have special unique features that are tied to when you install Drupal on your site. And actually, from the perspective of Drupal core, the only difference between a distribution and an install profile is actually that a distribution is a special kind of install profile. You can designate an install profile as a distribution. And when Drupal core sees that, it allows you to further customize the installer experience via the admin UX, like when you install Drupal. You can make the distribution be selected automatically. You can change the theme that's used during the installer experience, etc.
The language.
And the language. So another thing that's been historically associated with distributions is this concept of packaging dependencies. So in like the Drupal 7 days, or especially the early Drupal 7 days, if you wanted to be able to have like a code base that you could build repeatably, you kind of needed distributions to be able to pull that off. And distributions did this. Drupal.org actually used to facilitate this for distribution projects on Drupal.org. They used this old technology that it's now an unsupported feature of Drush called Drush Make that did dependency management similar to how Composer does that now. And that aspect of distributions, I think is fair to say, has become completely obsolete. That's been completely replaced by Composer. Now that Drupal core and Drupal.org have fully adopted Composer, the packaging of dependencies is no longer a thing distributions are uniquely able to do. Really, any Drupal project can do that now with Composer. So, if going back to this list of things that what an install profile is and what a distribution is, really the only things that have kind of been crossed off this list so far really is this one at the bottom. The other one that I crossed off this list, installing and overriding configuration, is actually something that's covered by recipes. And sorry, I meant to talk quickly about this. So there's another change that's happened with the Drupal core, and we alluded to this earlier. There's this initiative for Drupal core that was originally called the Distribution Modernization Initiative, and it's more recently been called the Distributions and Recipes Initiative. This is where the concept of recipes came from. And recipes were added as an experimental feature to Drupal core as of Drupal 10.3. And recipes provide a mechanism to to provide this feature that install profiles had of allowing install profile to provide config of its own, as well as override config of modules at install time. That's something you can actually do with recipes now. But the rest of the things on this list, really you still need, if you care about any of those things, especially the customizing of the installer experience, install profiles and distributions are really still the only way to do that with Drupal today. So what is different about recipes? Kind of what are recipes? I think probably most of you are at least a little familiar with recipes in Drupal CMS at this point, but if not, recipes are a new project type for Drupal, but they're not an extension type. This means that recipes are something that you apply to your site. They're not installed. And recipes do not have access to all the same functionality that you would get from like a module or an install profile. They can't implement hooks. They can't provide database updates. So recipes are really just a new concept, a new project type that allows you to basically package reasonable functionality. And there's only certain kinds of things that you can include in a recipe. You can include configuration, and you can include default content. And there's a new plugin system that's been added as experimental to Drupal core for recipes called config actions. And that's where you can replace the old functionality of like overriding config at install time. So some limitations of recipes, like because they're not installed, the Drupal site has no knowledge of which recipes have been applied. And really they're kind of designed only to be applied once. There's not really any way to update recipes after they've been applied. And because the API for recipes, or all the APIs that were added to Drupal core for recipes are still experimental, it's kind of hard to extend the functionality of recipes right now because all the APIs are still internal only and subject to change. So Gabor from the DA posted this comment on LinkedIn recently, highlighting this project that Fenn-Approxima, Adam GH, he's the lead architect behind Drupal CMS and recipes. So you might wonder, how does Drupal CMS work with all of this? And so Drupal CMS includes something called an installer that basically allows recipes to be applied when Drupal is being installed. And he's made this new project on Drupal.org called Recipe Installer Kit. And this you can use this if you want to create something like Drupal CMS for yourself that basically just applies a bunch of recipes. So our friend Brian Perry posted this comment in response to that post from Gabor about this installer kit, saying, this looks pretty cool, but like, I thought install profiles were bad, and we liked this. So the reason he says that is because if you actually look at the code for the Drupal CMS installer, it actually is an install profile. It actually is a distribution, even though it has a comment that says this is not a Drupal distribution. Actually, it is. But like, the interesting thing about how this works is that after the Drupal CMS installer applies all of these recipes, it actually uninstalls itself. It uninstalls the install profile. So that's kind of a key difference. So, and in response to Brian Perry's comment, Adam from the Recipes Initiative said, in his mind, recipes have really kind of clarified what install profiles should be. And I think we tend to agree with this. Like, even though there's some limitations of recipes currently, it does seem that like finally, after all these years, like install profiles have potentially a more clear purpose for the future, and that's a good thing in my opinion. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris. He's going to talk more about this concept of managing shared configuration. We wanted to put this quote from Ned Joe Rogers up on the screen. So you may not be familiar with Ned Joe Rogers. He was the maintainer and creator of a whole lot of contrib modules in the configuration space. So he contributed a lot to features to the Drupal core configuration system. He also is the creator and maintainer of the configuration synchronizer module, which is something we use and we're going to talk about. But he's kind of like, in our opinion, he represents the needs. His contributions within the configuration space on Drupal and on Drupal.org represent the needs of higher ed institutions better than anybody we've seen. So we all hail Ned Joe. Anyway, Chris is going to talk about managing shared configuration.
Thanks, Joe. Understanding distribution types. So generally there's two types of distributions. We have starter kits, which Drupal CMS is essentially, and we have our full-featured distributions. Starter kits are just base configuration. People don't expect to get updates for starter kit configuration, while a full-featured distribution, people might expect that, right? It also comes with base configuration. You can do shared configuration management. You can do module and theme updates, etc. Why does this matter, right? Consider this scenario about shared configuration management. So at Desert State University, the web team maintains a Drupal distribution that powers hundreds of department websites. To ensure consistency across all sites, they provide a shared install profile with a set of standardized content types, including a news content type with pre-configured fields. While the pre-configured fields do solve a lot of problems, it's not for everybody, right? So for example, the news team has a need to add a custom Boolean field to feature news in sections. Similarly, the journalism department wants to add related content with a entity reference field. Meanwhile, there's a university-wide initiative led by the marketing department to update all news meta tag defaults. The distribution maintainers are now in an interesting situation where they need to update the news and journalism sites with the new meta tags but keep the custom fields. Using an installation profile that manages shared configuration using configuration synchronizer, this is a fairly straightforward update for the distribution maintainers. So many of us are tempted to re-implement our installation profiles into recipe-based installations, but before taking that plunge, we should keep in mind that install profiles aren't going away. So one major selling point of recipes, which was solving for what I like to call abandoned distribution syndrome that a lot of sites have found themselves in experiencing, it's kind of been addressed by the ability to non-destructively uninstall an installation profile. So I would just say experiment with recipes now, find the limitations that might affect your portfolio or your needs. Drupal core does not or currently lacks built-in shared configuration management, and so the responsibility for that falls on us distribution maintainers. So previously in Drupal 7, we used modules like features or features overrides or strong arm or default config to manage our configuration. But now in Drupal 8, we use a module called configuration synchronizer. Configuration synchronizer allows site-specific customizations to be preserved on those sites while still allowing new and competing configuration to be merged in. So without shared configuration management, you might be tempted to write release notes like the recent Drupal CMS release did with instructions for site owners to follow to change configuration manually in order to get the expertly crafted configuration updates. So the key questions that we have here are, do users of my distribution manage or plan to manage shared configuration across multiple sites? And to answer that question, in reality, we often don't know exactly how the users of our distributions are using them. And so likely the best path forward is to maintain it as an install profile. So how do we move forward? Is your distribution intended to provide initial configuration, or do you want to manage shared configuration going forward? If you do want to manage shared configuration going forward, my recommendation is to maintain an install profile. If it's just meant to be base configuration, you can get by with a recipe-based installation. So, ending this talk, are recipes dead at the University of Arizona? I don't think they are.
Distributions.
Oh, sorry. Are distributions dead? Yeah, see, it's really hard. Thank you. And we have a bunch of additional resources on our slides that you guys can look at when we share this. All right. So it's just, this is a comparison table between update helper and configuration synchronizer. We have a bunch of links, etc.
Sorry, we didn't realize there were transitions on this.
Yeah, sorry. There we go.
Thanks. All right.
Well, if you want to keep having the debate about do you need distributions or recipes, now's going to be your time. Because, yeah, so we thought we'd take this one to talk about the future of Drupal as a discussion. Because distributions and recipes, you know, recipes definitely are part of Drupal CMS. It's the future. So, table discussions, these questions towards the future of Drupal and how you manage pushing those updates out to your universities.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks. Perfect timing.
Cool.
All right, and we're wrapping up our conversations. We're wrapping up our conversations. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And you say, one. No, how's it go? I'm not a first grader. I can't think of it, how it goes. All right. Thank you. I hope that was a great conversation. Next up, we have a talk from Acquia to talk about some of the stuff they're doing. We have Bruno here to present for them. So take it away, that brief introduction.
Says that it's there, but clearly it's not. Yeah, try it again. Gonna check it out.
Yeah, it definitely says display is connected. That countdown in the corner is giving me anxiety.
I can try my own adapter.
Yeah, you can try your own adapter, yeah.
Okay. Want to swap? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, my name is Bruno Costa. I am not a distribution maintainer. Not that smart. But thank you guys for explaining what distributions are and stall profiles as well. I think that's going to help with my conversation. I'm here today to talk about how Drupal and Acquia can help with experiences at scale, right? How we can help power those robust, modern, and secure digital experiences. The big challenge we want to address, why we're talking about this, is especially in higher ed, we see most of our customers, they face a similar challenge, and hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can see that well. I know you all have a lot of different properties, right? A lot of different websites you need to manage. And as we saw before, there are ways that can help you do it, right? In Drupal, there are a lot of benefits and features in Drupal that will help you manage those properties at scale. The key challenges that we see our customers facing and prospects If we look from the IT lenses, the IT perspective, usually there's some sort of central IT organization in most of the universities. And they all face the same challenges, right? There are not enough resources, not enough people and money and time to manage all the different websites that you have to manage. As the websites grow and departments adopt their own solutions, they go rogue and they do their own thing to solve the problems, you lose that visibility. You lose the ability to track what's happening, who's using what, where, and basically you lose control over those sites. And finally, well, security threats, nothing new there for anyone, but the more different technologies you adopt, the more different CMSs you introduce in the environment, the higher your risks to face some sort of threat on your websites. Now, when we look from the lenses of the departments, the users, the people building those sites, building the experience, they have different challenges that they need to balance as well. Most of the time, they don't have the time that it takes to build a new experience and the complexity. We heard about distributions and install profiles, and that all helps with making the process of creating a new site, a new experience, easier, right? To kind of ease that pain a little bit. But if you're not standardized, if you're using all sorts of different technologies, you're going to find a lot of complexity in the process, the time will kind of get out of control as well. Anytime you need to deploy a new component, we were just talking about how can you enforce a design system? How can you establish a library of components that people will actually adopt and follow? And then when you need to make changes, how can they make changes? If one department wants to build a new feature on the website, how quickly can they do that, right? If they are using their own thing, their own technology, they can probably go fast. But if you have a standardized approach, well, they're going to have to go through some hoops to make that happen. And finally, for the user, when you do have a lot of controls in place, they will lose the flexibility, the ability to make any changes they want anytime they want. Right? So those are kind of the challenges we see most of our customers facing. Is there any other challenge here that you were facing that is not listed? Anyone? All right, so we did a pretty good job, I guess. All right, so, how can we help, right? How can Drupal and Acquia help with those challenges? This should be no surprise to anybody here, but when I was looking at that slide again, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty big. 26% of all EDU sites run on Drupal. I don't think there's any debate that it's a very good, robust solution for our industry, for our space. And 71% of the top 100 are on Drupal. I was in Colombia last week. I'm actually from Brazil originally, so I speak the Spanish as well. I had to learn. And I was visiting customers down there and partners, and I was kind of surprised. We visited, I think, 4 or 5 universities in Bogota alone. They're all Drupal customers, all Acquia customers. And they're very happy with the results they're getting. Before adopting Drupal, they're running on all sorts of small CMSs and every department trying to do their own thing and figure it out. They're now establishing a foundation, a standard for any website, any digital property, any public-facing content from the universities are now running on the same platform, running on Drupal, and they're working on those design systems as well. But I think this goes to say that, yeah, it's a solid solution. You should be, comfortable that Drupal will be able to provide all the scalability, the flexibility that you would need when you have, all those different stakeholders, the different departments, and all the diverse needs that they have, right? Everyone wants to do their own special thing. I was looking into the why, right? Why is this the case? Why people adopt Drupal in this space? And one of the reasons I saw is that Drupal is actually a very solid foundation for a multi-site approach, for a many sites approach. And part of it, I think it goes back to the distribution, right? Distribution, install profiles, the flexibility that gives you to create that standard that should go across the entire organization, right? I'm a solutions engineer at Aqua, so I do a lot of demos. I run product demos to our customers. And we have our own factory. We have our own distribution that we use for our demos. And we have a number of different installation profiles. I do demos for universities, so I have a higher ed profile. When I need a new website, I just go to that profile. In a few clicks, I install it, and I have a website with content, with everything I need to run a demo for a higher ed. If I'm doing a B2C, some sort of commerce website, I have an install profile running on the same distribution. That gives me a complete different experience. Same thing for headless, right? We have also a headless distro there that can help us, with our needs, with our demos. So going back to the distribution install profile, I think that's kind of the core capability in Drupal that makes it such a good solution for, especially for this space, for this industry. When you have that, then it comes the second step. The challenge will be getting everybody to somewhat agree on what, the components and the design, kind of the baseline for a university should look like. And I think that's where the big challenge is. And it's not so much a technology challenge, in my opinion. It's much more a process and kind of organization structure challenge, right? You have to get everybody on the table, and they have to say, yeah, we're on board. We want to do this together, right? We see the benefits of having a lot less, overhead in maintaining different technologies and recreating and reinventing the wheel for every single department anytime we need something new, right? When you do that, then you're going to have a solid foundation. And then this is Drupal alone. I'm not talking about Aqua at all here, right? So at Aqua, what we did is, there's a solid foundation that we can build upon. So we created a solution. I didn't know, but I think the latest version is 12 years old now, Site Factory. So we have a solution called Site Factory that is helping customers for over a decade now. And what that solution does, it's basically, it takes all the benefits you get with Drupal multi-site and kind of, put a nice user interface on top of it. So instead of having to do everything manually and go through the kind of, a development process, you have a management console. You can go and you can build sites from scratch with a few clicks. If you want to deploy new code, you have a place to do that. You have a whole set of administration tasks you can accomplish directly from a user interface, right? And that was built on top of our cloud hosting capability, right? The Aqua Cloud Classic. All the benefits users had before with like development, staging environments, all the infrastructure being maintained by Aqua, the support team, that's also available for our Cloud Site Factory customers. So the process of making this happen, right, it's not just, as I said, it's not just technology. You have to plan ahead to be able to have a successful implementation of something like this, right? When you're talking about hundreds or thousands of websites, there's a lot of planning that you need to put in this, and a lot of effort to make this happen in the right way. Talking with our customers and with people that went through the process, we try to capture what kind of good looks like from their perspective, what the process that they went through, and we created a blueprint for people that want to go through that same process. The first thing we noticed is that everybody that was successful in doing this, they established a team, basically, right? We're calling it a digital governance team, but it's basically getting all the different stakeholders, representation from the departments, central IT, everybody that has a say should be on the table, and then you bring the experts, right? You bring either Aqua, or you bring another partner, you bring the agency, anybody that will be working in that distribution, that installation profile, they will be part of this team. And this team together will define what that, distro will look like, how many installation profiles we need, how many components, what the design system will look like, what the process will be to get that up and running, right? So it's a lot about the process and the people involved. When you have that in place, then the steps that most people are successful with will go somewhat like this, right? So this is a blueprint. It will vary, depending on your projects. But the first thing to do is, plan as best as we can. We know we want to be agile, but you have to start with a, somewhat of a solid foundation from the project. So capture as many requirements you can. Define all the risks or all the things that could derail the process, right, of getting this to happen. The number two will be the actual build of that foundation. So it will be building the distribution, we'll be building those installation profiles, the baseline for any of the websites. When you have that ready, then start small. Pick one of the websites, probably a low-hanging fruit, one of those that are pretty bad already, so people are not going to complain too much if anything goes wrong. You start there, you do one website, that will be your step 3. Make sure everything works fine, all the new content is there, the users, the departments, they like the experience, and then use that to convince the others to go through the process as well. And plan that ahead, right? This ramped migration plan is very important too. Take your time to group which departments will likely be better to move together, right? Which sites will make more sense? Maybe if it's all like the public-facing sites, move that together, or if you have a lot of intranets, you want to do it as well. Try to group that in a way that will make sense from a capability perspective as well. And finally, especially from our perspective, we want to make sure we have a smooth transition between the project and then who is going to support them moving forward. So make sure you have training in place. People know where to find what each distribution or each profile do. You have documentation about that. You have the components, the library, all that easy to find. And if they want to make a change, there is a process to do that as well, right? So that's really important. So that's kind of an oversimplified version of what the process will actually look like. You can probably kind of drill down into each one of those steps and have a lot more steps there. But from a blueprint perspective, that's what people are following and are making them successful deploying a solution like this. So this is going to be just a little teaser about what the future looks like from our perspective. We are actually launching a new version of what Site Factory was. We're calling it a multi-experience operation solution. If you are familiar with Acquia, we have a cloud hosting capability for many years now. We call that Cloud Classic because there's a new solution called Acquia Cloud Next, which is now based on Kubernetes. It has the latest and greatest of auto scale and also basically the automated process from a perspective of deployments, the ease of use, all the good things we had with the traditional cloud. We kept that, so all the user interface, the ease of use for the end users is still there. All the different dev tools as well, like our Code Studio, Cloud IDE, it's all available. But now using a much more modern and robust backend, right? The infrastructure. We're doing something similar to the Site Factory story. Now we're not moving Site Factory per se to this new infrastructure. We're actually creating a new experience. The MEO will be created from scratch on top of this new technology. So that will allow us to take advantage of new features and capabilities available in a Kubernetes-based environment that we didn't have before. So if you want to learn more about that, we're going to have tomorrow our own product manager, Phil, right here. He'll be talking more about this tomorrow at 1:30, right, Phil? 1:30 on Hanover C. And there's also a Q&A session on Wednesday, 9:50, right? So there you can go and you can ask all the questions you want about MEO and Site Factory, and we'll be happy to answer all those questions for you. All right. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. We have time for questions. We have time for questions if anybody has any questions. All right. So you have some extra time for break. Oh, you have a question there.
Did you say that new solution is that already available, or is it like early access kind of thing? It's more early access.
So the question is if the solution is already available, the MEO, and it's early access. I have access, but I don't think a lot of people do. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Great job. Thanks. Oh, here, this is your adapter. So leave it to a solution engineer to get things on time. So now we have so much time for a break. Instead of 2:30, should we go back? No, I'm not gonna keep messing with it. That's what a developer likes to do, tweak with it. All right, so now we have a break for coffee, chat, till 2:30, and then we're gonna come back for more lightning talks. Wait, we have to give the community summit a run for its money. How's it going? Yeah.
How's your family, by the way?
They're doing well.
I have to say, it's funny. It's like I don't miss being at the bus stop, but I miss being at the bus stop. Like the whole like, but just kind of like to like sit around and talk to you guys.
The girls are good. Kindergarten, second grade. Yeah, bus stop's fine. The new bus driver is much better.
Is the time being more consistent?
Yeah. Like, something like 8:23.
No, she's first year in Pollard. That's going well. It's interesting because she said Pollard better. Not just she hated Hiron, but she likes Pollard better, which is the exact opposite from most kids. Like most kids, like Pollard's fine as far as middle school goes, middle school or middle school. But just that, like Alexis really liked her, and I was like, I like Pollard. It's like, it might just be what cluster she's in, but she's happy with it. Sounds really good. Alexis is in college, so it's.
How they do with the news?
Actually wants to be fired from this financial job, so we have to work on it.
Oh, all right. I don't want. I like doing it. I get the excuse where I get to watch everybody talk, and I don't have to talk to everybody.
So you're just talking about it as a kindergarten.
Okay. All right. Good.
Well, you said earlier, it's like, well, you guys aren't very organized, and I'm like, you expect Tyra to be organized.
I know, right?
No way.
Still learning that lesson.
Your snacks does or is it?
There's caffeine.
Really, see you in a little bit.
All right.
Did you actually want to go with his dongle?
We can try this one first and just make sure it works.
Your computer.
Yeah, we're just testing to see. Yeah, I might need to use my dongle on this one.
Is that mic right?
Is everybody getting back? Did everybody find the coffee?
We may need another minute, so I wouldn't get too riled up.
So I didn't have a chance to go get coffee, and somebody had asked me, are there snacks with the coffee? Were there snacks with the coffee, or was it just coffee? Boo. No snacks, just coffee. All right. Not at all. Look, I didn't have to do 1, 2, 3 eyes on me or anything. Awesome job, everybody. Gold stars for everyone. What's that? Thanks to coffee? You would think the coffee would make you more jittery and talk, which, yeah, come on up.
Yes.
All right, we have Nathan and Peter here to talk. I forget their lightning talk title. There it is. Take it away.
Hello, welcome to our lightning talk, From Frustration to Flow, empowering user-friendly Drupal authoring experiences. This talk is part of a big big program at Harvard. We're going from an open Scholar-based platform to a brand new Drupal 10 platform. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to focus specifically on the authoring experience, and even with that, there's still a lot to talk about. So we're going to go quickly. Please let us know if we're going too quickly. My name's Peter Farrow. I'm the senior tech lead for Harvard Web Publishing. I've been using Drupal since 2008. Actually, when I lived here in Atlanta, my very first Drupal meetup was about a mile that way in Inman Park. It's been quite the journey.
All right, and I'm Nathan Plowman. I'm a senior solutions architect at Jacala. Some of you may know our company by our previous name, which was FFW. Jacala have been partnering with Harvard on this project for about the last 2.5 years now. So I've been working with Drupal since 2012, and I'm based out of Boise, Idaho.
So what is Harvard Sites Drupal? To understand what we had to solve for the authoring experience, it helps understand what we had to solve for the platform. Again, as I was saying, we're migrating from a legacy platform onto a new Drupal 10 based platform. Absolute keys to this platform were to make sure, well, and to back up a little bit, that we're trying to solve for very common needs around Harvard. Publications, news pages, and that with those, we are looking to not necessarily solve everyone's problems, but to meet standard needs so we could have people come onto the platform. Now, for this to be successful, we had a couple goals. we knew that had to be scalable. And that a big part of that is working with a large number of site authors. So it had to be simple. As was mentioned earlier today, we know that a lot of our content authors have jobs where their first job is not managing their website. It might be like number 10 on the list. And so how do we make it easy for them to get onto the site, do what they need to do, and then get on with the rest of their day? Flexibility is really key for us, that the way different schools express their look and feel around Harvard is very, very different from school to school. So to make sure that we have the flexibility we need is really key. And then accessibility is a fundamental part of everything that we do. Partly because it's the right thing to do. Our mission is to share Harvard's knowledge with the world and to make sure that anyone can get to that. But there are also risks involved with accessibility, and to make sure that we are not exposing ourselves and our content authors unduly to risk.
Yeah, I'd say in accessibility, we kind of cared about that from two different angles. We both wanted to make sure that, like, the editing interface, when you're going in creating pages, like those edit forms, the admin settings pages, things like that, were accessible, but also we wanted to empower the content authors to create accessible content as well. All right, so to talk a little bit about the pathway we took to get to the authoring experience that we have on the Harvard Sites Drupal platform today. I'll just kind of lay out the pathway. So we definitely didn't get everything perfect right on our very first draft of our authoring experience. One of the things I was really glad that we did as part of this project is, instead of just rolling out the platform to hundreds of sites right away, we instead started with an MVP build of the platform that had a more limited feature set, and we kind of tested that out with a handful of pilot sites first. One of the pieces of feedback that we kind of heard over and over again with those pilot sites was, a little bit of frustration around, trying to figure out, like, why do I have to go to the layout tab first? Like, I don't understand this. So there was a bit of feedback around the authoring experience where it wasn't as intuitive as we'd hoped. And I think we took that feedback and said, hey, we should really spend some more time on this before we roll this out to a larger number of sites. As is probably common, I think, with a lot of Drupal sites, we didn't really do wireframes and designs for the authoring experience, just because we knew that we'd be using Drupal core and contrib modules to build a lot of those things, and that we wouldn't be coding them from scratch. But I think, kind of taking some of the feedback from those pilot sites to heart, we decided, hey, maybe it would be a good idea to kind of approach the design of our authoring experience in a way a little more similar to the way that we design for the end user experience. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and we did a mini discovery just around the authoring experience, where we did workshops, wireframing exercises, and technical prototyping before we kind of built our second draft of that authoring experience. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of some of those activities that we did during that mini discovery, I have some screenshots of some of the Miro boards and kind of artifacts from that. So here's kind of a board from one of our workshops where we were kind of talking about and debating the trade-offs between flexibility and design governance, because those kind of things kind of go hand in hand. Do we want to allow our content authors to be able to mix and match anything in any order? Like, should I be able to put a quote next to an image next to a text block? Or do we want to have that locked down a little bit more, where it's like, okay, like, if you're going to do a section of stat cards, it should be a section of stat cards. So, kind of had debates like that. We investigated different Drupal modules for page building, like layout paragraphs, layout builder, and kind of evaluated pros and cons of each, and had discussions about which ones we thought would be the better fit for, both the design governance that we were going for and just the general UX we wanted. We did brainstorming sessions on kind of looking at, like, what types of authoring experience features people wanted, like, the ability to clone pages, the ability to have some kind of visual preview, different things like that. And we did a prioritization exercise where we ranked those things. For wireframing, again, we knew that we probably wouldn't be coding the edit forms from scratch, but we wanted to still put some deliberate thought and attention into, like, how should we organize these fields? Like, what field widgets should we select for these different things? How do we want to group things in a logical way? So we still went through kind of a wireframing exercise just to kind of put a little bit more thoughtful and attention into those details. There were a few cases that we identified that we did want to do some customization. So like, for example, like with our component picker, we wanted to have, custom icons for those to give authors a better idea of, what does this component do as opposed to just having a text label. Or in this case, we wanted to have a custom column widget that would kind of give them a visual preview of, how things would be laid out on the rendered page. So coming out of that mini discovery, some of the implementation strategies and guidelines that we decided on were, accessibility. I'll kind of let Peter speak to that first bullet point a little bit.
Yeah, and I just want to share that something that we do, which was shared by another school earlier today, we have an accessibility team, and that they are they're a part of our process. And so, like what you can see up here in terms of making sure that we're using standard HTML, keyboard navigation, things like that. As we're doing development, they're called the DAS team, the Digital Accessibility Team, that they are with us every step of the way to make sure that anything that we're doing is accessible. Again, because it's the right thing to do, and it helps us control our risk. So that was absolutely key in terms of implementation strategy.
Yep, and then, there's probably more to accessibility than we can cover in a few bullet points, but, some of the guidelines we looked at is like, we try to stick with using standard HTML widgets, so like a select list as opposed to like something custom wherever possible, just because those tend to be a little bit more robust when it comes to compatibility with assistive technology. And in cases where we did decide that a custom field widget, like a multi-select or something like that, was necessary, we wanted to make sure that we were following proper ARIA guidelines. Organization, kind of another important point. So we tried to, we had a lot of style options and things like that on our components. So the edit forms could get quite long and encumbered by fields. So we tried to group things into smaller field sets based off of purpose. So, like our main fields, like your title, body, things like that would go in a content tab. Things that controlled, like, okay, is the image on the left, is the image on the right, is this, different things like that control like style settings or metadata, we'd put in separate settings tabs. We tried to, order the fields on the form in the same order that they'd appear on the rendered page, just kind of ensuring consistency. So like if we have a rich text field that's kind of used as the main content area and one content type, we don't want to name it like body in one place and main content in another. We tried to like ensure that there was consistency across all of our content types. Again, a lot of those things are very obvious, but it's one of those things where if you get it right, nobody notices, and if you get it wrong, everyone complains about it. Self-documenting was kind of another important principle for us. We don't want hidden knowledge on our edit forms. So what I mean by hidden knowledge would be things like, let's say we have an event content type, and one of your content authors is trying to figure out, okay, this is an online event. I need a place to put my Zoom link, and there's not a single thing on your form that says like online event URL or like, Zoom URL, things like that. So you go and talk to the developer like, oh, just put that in the registration URL field. And it's like, okay, how would I know that? I think like a lot of us have probably seen those types of things creep into our websites where it's like, maybe we didn't design it for this or have that in mind originally, and kind of like some of this tribal knowledge creeps in over time where it's just like, this is just something that, people working with the website for years understand, and they've kind of gotten used to the quirks, but it's not really something that a new person would ever kind of just intuit. So we want to try and avoid those things.
And both of those are really key to what we were talking about earlier in terms of simplicity. Like, how do we make it easy for our authors to come in, achieve what they need to do, and get on with everything else they need to do? So, and I think our feedback on those actually has been pretty good so far. So. And then just this last point, that's useful to all sites on the platform. One of the key things that we're doing is making sure that people understand we're not trying to build a platform to handle every possible need the university could have. We're really trying to find a core and to build to that. And that there's a lot of flexibility in that. That goes from everything from relatively straightforward sites for graduate students to labs sharing a lot of data, to museum sites. We've had flagship sites, actually more than I was initially expecting, come onto the platform. And that always takes place around, we are trying to create an experience that's going to work for you, the site owner, and what we don't want to do is to break the platform. We don't want to break it for our authors, we don't want to break it for our site owners. And so just to make sure that that is a fundamental part of our strategy. So.
All right, so for enough of us talking, let's actually look at what this thing looks like. All right, so just to kind of provide some context, I'll just kind of show briefly kind of the layout of what one of our landing page looks like. So, we'll have a full width section at the top where you can place things like a hero banner. We have an optional section navigation, which is kind of tied to the main menu structure. We have just a rich text field for the main content, which appears to the right of the sidebar. And then we have like a drop zone for putting components below that. And then we have one more kind of drop zone for components that is also full width, that's at the bottom of the page. So the way this looks when you just go to create a brand new page is something like this. So kind of going back to organization principles, we tried to match it so that the order of the fields kind of goes from top to bottom. So again, page title would be first, followed by like the hero banner if you're using that, the body, that additional content section. Talking about like visual hints or kind of providing that visual cue. One of the things that we kind of anticipated is like content authors might be confused about like, when should I put stuff in the top region and when should I put it in like, say, the additional content section. So we just did a, very simple, just, div with some styling for this section nav, just to provide a visual hint that, hey, if you're putting stuff in main content or additional content, that's not going to be full width and that's going to appear next to the section nav. And then we have like an option where you can toggle that on and off. And again, that's kind of visually reflected there as well. When you go to add a component, again, this is like that custom component picker that we saw in the wireframes earlier. We have like thumbnails to provide a visual cue and like what this component does. And then you'll kind of notice the main body is pretty clean. We just have like those, pretty much just the component drop zones plus the main body. As a general organization principle, we try to keep anything that's like more used for managing metadata or settings, so like your menu settings, meta tags, taxonomies, the thumbnail field for the teaser cards. We try to keep all of that in the sidebar just so the focus is kind of just on the main content.
And we've actually had a bunch of conversations like, does it belong in the center or does it belong in the sidebar? And so like, and some of these are kind of tough, but we've always tried to keep it as streamlined as possible. So.
Yep. And then to kind of show what that looks like if I edit a page that's already populated with content, so we have it worked out so like it will render the components with the front end styles within this editor preview. It's a little bit squashed width-wise, but it is using the same styles in this editor preview that we use on the rendered page. Just to kind of look at one of these components. So again, kind of that main thing we talked about, we are trying to like group things into different field sets for content versus settings. So like here we have like this style for the hero banner where you've got like floating stacked, split horizontal that kind of change the layout. We have things for the size, like how vertically tall it is. So those we try to keep separate from the actual main content, which you can kind of see here. And then again, this is kind of that nested level, but kind of same thing where we have that same tab structure for separating, content versus other settings. And then for visual cues, again, like we tried to do, like, okay, what does floating, what does stacked mean? Because it might not be obvious from the labels, so we try to do like little preview thumbnails to give a visual cue to that. And then I'll just kind of create a new component here at the bottom just to kind of see what that process looks like for a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and create vertical cards. So here we have section heading. So most of our components have this optional like heading, intro, CTA links field you can add there. Color settings. So we have a theme that has multiple color palettes. So it was a little difficult for us to use labels like, navy blue, crimson red, things like that, because those are going to be different depending on which color theme they have set on their site. So we used more generic labels like light primary, dark primary, and we built this custom little HTML preview so that you can see this is what it looks like with your current color theme. So this is kind of showing like the background color, the text, and the CTA for both like the top level and nested items. I'm just going to go ahead and add a few vertical cards. Just going to use placeholder text for speed real quick. We're just going to use a image from our media library. All right, and then just for speed, we're using like layout paragraphs for like the paragraphs editing widgets, which is kind of nice. It has these little duplicate features, so I'm just going to use that. This is kind of a nice feature, so like if your content editors just want to, quickly see this is how the layout looks like, and kind of get a sense of the design before they spend time like populating everything with the title, body, image. It kind of gives them a quick way to preview that. All right, and then we have the preview there, and then I'm going to click save, and then we'll see that on the rendered page. All right, so that's just a quick overview, and then Peter, if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about where we're going next with the.
Why don't you go back one? And actually, Mike, I think we're just about out of time, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to wrap here.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening to us.
All right, thank you.
You could jump to Peter's table or Nathan's table if you want to keep talking with them and not our break. Our transition for our table discussion is about user management and authoring. We thought this would be a good conversation piece following that talk. So next 15 minutes or so, talk. All right, we're going to wind down those conversations. I was just about to call you out. Be like, come on up. But perfect. All right, we're winding up our conversations. It does work. All right. I hope those were great. I love walking around and hearing all the different conversations, so it's excellent. All right, we have our last sponsor talk from Pantheon, and then after that we'll have our panel discussion and some other updates. So we'll turn this over.
It's on.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? My name's Erin Crowley. I'm an account executive on the SLED team at Pantheon. And nothing makes us happier than seeing higher ed web teams thrive on our platform. In migrating to Pantheon, Paul and Chaz and the UCLA team really kind of overhauled their web operations processes. And in doing so, saw some pretty amazing results that Paul will speak to today. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Paul Babin, Web Systems Manager at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA.
So I titled this talk, How Switching to Pantheon Gave Me My Life Back. It's a little tongue-in-cheek. So why we are here. So this is the accumulation of 3 months of work to migrate approximately 174 sites over to Pantheon. Before I start, I just want to thank the following, Pantheon for this opportunity, Drupal and the open source community, which includes all of you here. Just a huge thanks. I can't imagine 6 years ago I came at my first DrupalCon and had no idea that I'd actually be up here speaking at something like this today. The community has been so great to be able to find and learn and just excel. It's just amazing what I've been able to do. I started with OpenACS and Tickle and the Tickle Toolkit. I don't know if anybody knows what this is, but I actually did the sites for AOL. Tells you how gnarly the system was. So, and then lastly, I have to thank UCLA and specifically Chaz and our team for pushing the expectations of what we can do for our clients. I threw on just a little family picture. I had a picture of us in Italy with the Pantheon behind us, but it was taken at night, and once you blow it up, it looked horrendous. So I just picked another photo. Now, this particular slide, lots of fancy words. This is actually what we used to sell it to our stakeholders that we needed to make a move. Big words: infrastructure differences facilitate paradigm shifts in workflows, providing developers experiences, or development efficiencies, better user experiences, and offloading work to our partners. So I am going to highlight each one of these things that we actually gained, and these were some of the stats that we provided to our stakeholders about why we should move. So I'll get into them in just a moment. So how we got here. Who we are. We're a 3-person development team with dedicated stakeholders. So I've seen a few of these presentations talk about governments. I think Acquia talked about that here earlier. We follow a lot of that. On our front end, Chaz Tremley, who you may have heard speak today, he's got 18 years of Drupal experience. We were able to hire Mario. On the CI/CD, back-end development, and site maintenance, I got myself, 6 years into Drupal. Our product stakeholders, we have Kristen Lindberger, who's our governance, Stefan Popov, who is here today, Kelsey Collins, who's on QA. It's her first DrupalCon, so welcome. And then we have our people on SEO optimizations. That's Diane Sievert and Scott Volk. A lot of these people aren't here, but I just want to call out the team that make us who we are. And then there's a lot of other stakeholders that guide where we're going. So what we provide, one, I want to thank Michael. That Yell setup is a lot like ours. So we've got 4 content types. We've got office hours. Everything that Michael talked about today is pretty much a lot of what we're doing with some minor differences. So I mentioned the strong governance team already. We inherited what was known as Site Farm from UC Davis. It had features. Chaz had me get out of features as soon as possible. I do a lot of stuff in the config, so a lot of talk about config today. So we're 80% config just management, 10% config ignore, and then I have some overrides and then some config splits. We absolutely have no web forms. We do not allow individuals to go onto the sites and do anything with web forms. We also have no client access to fields and view UI. And we're using layout paragraphs and Mercury editor. So you saw Harvard just talk about, I think it was layout paragraphs in there. And if you get a chance to see the Mercury editor, highly recommend it. I think Atten's doing a talk about that tomorrow. There's lots of other features that I can talk and go on. Chaz will definitely talk about to no end. So pre-Pantheon, we had a very complicated multi-site. Also from Jason and Chris, thank you. It's a distribution with self-imposed rules, limited environments, and our agility is restricted. Now I want to be really clear, this isn't just the host. We had a lot of stuff on our end, our governance that set up a lot of these requirements. High security, WAFs, things of that nature that added complications, and then we're always trying to save some money, right? So you can offer a new service, but we might not be able to afford it. We have 150 sites on production. Our dev site dev setup is super complicated. And for the 3 developers, we rely mostly on local development. So yay, DDev, thank you, Randy. We also, in the dev environment, there's limited dedicated custom URLs. We have to manually stage everything down into our host environment. We had manual assignments of IPs. I never really got a chance to update it because it's a lot of work to set up a dev environment. You're building in features, doing a features branch, and you don't really need to set this all into the production environment, dev environment, just to see a CSS change. So that's why a lot of that development's all in DDev. So we reserve the dev environment for multi-sprint development requiring heavy QA. Things like image style updates, we need to make sure that those things go smooth. I think Stefan and Kelsey are going through 4,000 pages right now, or images, to make sure that our image update is going well. We also had some rules on our test environment. I always question this. It was a bit of a push-pull between our groups. Why do we have to have our test sites available 24/7 for our end users? It's almost like a production environment. So the one thing in our development, what we would do is we have an upcoming staging branch. All of our features that have passed kind of our local tests and everything will go into that staging branch and eventually would become what we do as our release. In order to facilitate in the environment that we were in, I had to automate deployment every night. It takes about 3 hours. So basically what that means, you've pushed all the updates to staging, but still you don't have the updb, you don't have the config and import. Those things need to happen. So QA, we have some communication mismatches while QA is trying to QA stuff that hasn't really been updated yet because we still have the update scripts going through. I also had to automate the staging down of 150 sites weekly. That's another multi-hour process. And then we weren't really able to destroy and experiment. And there's a lot of release headaches. Because of the setup that I just talked about, we had a lot of troubleshooting we had to do. And then I still don't necessarily understand why this was, but there were cache headaches. We have cache clear in our deployment process, but still it wasn't cleared, so we still have to go through and run another cache clear. And it's not varnish, it wasn't the varnish piece. And then also, lastly, with spotty spot checks. So now, moving over to Pantheon, we own the CI/CD pipeline. And it just makes for an all-around better developer and end user process. This migration is still in process. DNS, it takes time. Our dev setup is super simplified. We have managed the CI/CD with parallelization. There's better integrated linting. We had this in our other hosts as well, but we took all the lessons learned. So every single code before you even develop or push code into our multi-dev has to pass linting, has to pass our code standards. We run through Cypress testing, so lots of lessons learned there. And then we now have multi-dev available for all our feature branches. I know our QA groups are going to be super happy about this because previously we were using Tugboat. We had a fake site that they were able to go to, but it did not give them the real experience. Now it's in multi-dev. Now they can actually test what it's going to look like. Our test is still available 24/7 for our end users. And it's a fully completed deployed release. We no longer have this like workarounds that we had to do before. And then no more release headaches. We identify this at the multi-dev level. Our staging branch is a multi-dev, so we identify those issues before it even gets into the release pipeline. So now we got a lot of marketing talk, the user experience, our user experience games. And before I get to the end of this, I'm a developer at heart, so you'll hear me kind of get a little more excited when we get to the development side. So one of the things we saw immediately is an 86% faster response time on our sites. The graphic on the bottom represents the day we moved the WAF over. So this is a complicated scenario. I think we had issues. I don't know. I think a lot of you might be dealing with LLMs crawling your sites, hitting your search pages, hitting those faceted search pages, and causing sites to come down. So that we managed our own WAF, so we ran into some of those challenges, and not necessarily the host fault. We had a lot to do for this as well. So with Pantheon, we have a dedicated. The other part also is the shared architecture. I didn't really highlight. We had a multi-site, so we moved over to custom upstreams. The multi-site ran into some challenges specifically with this LLMs because one site gets hit really hard, the rest of them start getting hard too, and then everything starts slowing down. So with the dedicated architecture at Pantheon, at the site level, we're not seeing this. And then they're managing the WAF for us. Yes, it costs a little bit of money, but we don't have to worry about it anymore, so thank you. We also have improved site availability. I've talked about our deploy process. It takes forever. It's 3 hours to go through this whole deploy. I had to schedule it for 3 o'clock in the morning. I then sign on about 6 o'clock, verify everything's going okay. I doubt we have people, but there are. Working at any institution, you have your PIs who are going to sign on at 5 o'clock in the morning. They might want to edit their sites. Well, they can't while this whole process is going through. We do communicate to our end users through Teams, through updates saying, hey, stuff is happening, so please don't edit your sites during this time frame. I mentioned earlier on the test environment, we just had misconfigurations because our config imports and our upDBs didn't happen just yet, so a little bit QA challenges. On the Pantheon side, we know it works. Our developers live in multi-dev. Our structure now is we set up the release branch. Release branch gets pushed to dev. We run through Autopilot. If Autopilot comes up with any visual regression challenges, we stop the release right then and there. That'll go back to our next week's sprint to make sure we catch any of those issues. If it passes Autopilot, that dev then goes into the test environment. We leave the test environment for a week for all our other end users to give us feedback. If there's feedback, then that feedback will go back into our upcoming sprint or into previous, even more upcoming sprints, go into our backlog. And then we know if it's going to work in dev, it's going to work in tests, and it's also going to work in production. So such a huge change from our previous experience. Interdepartmental gains. Improved reporting and insights. I mentioned that LLM piece. We started getting slammed approximately February 5th. Sites started going down. People couldn't sign into their sites. And I had again, I'm new to this, 6 years in, haven't had a chance to go through logs yet. Trying to parse through one single log on 160 sites, trying to find out which one is causing the problem was a challenge. Thank you, GoAccess. Thank you, LNAV, and then being able to identify all this. There's also limited host reporting. We can't really get site-level analytics. I had to request it from our rep. And then another complication that's on our end, we weren't allowed to put Google Analytics onto our sites. Another thing for our QA and SEO people, we have no idea or insight on our sites for at least the last 3 years. We're now getting site improve. finally getting through that whole process, but due to someone putting a pixel in a clinic site that was behind behind one of our logins, they actually sent PHI information. So one of the worst things that could possibly happen. So they said, legal said, nope, you can't have any of it. And then I know eventually if we stuck, I would have had time to develop log parsing and kind of ease this particular thing, but there's time. That's time that I'd rather be providing features to our end users. So within Pantheon, it's part of Terminus. There's a Terminus command that you can get this information out, and it can be automated. So I've seen instances where people are able to push out Excel spreadsheets to sites and say, hey, this is your site. These are how many visits you got in this last week, this last month. And it's my end goal in a couple months when I've had some more time to be able to provide this at a massive level, saying like the entire platform is getting this many hits. We got these many visitors, and then we can break it down at the site level, which we did not have before. So our stakeholders will have better data to make data-driven decisions. The other big piece is the reduced CDN and WAF management. So I mentioned we managed our own WAF. While we were working through this whole LLM piece, started making some custom tweaks to our networking group that would cause some sites to go down, or at least a couple pages to go down, so we had to go back and forth. Our needs actually drove changes for the organizational WAF. Redirects. At one point, we had redirects coming into the site at the Drupal level and then going back out. I was able to finally talk to our organization saying, hey, we're paying for this WAF. Can you just redirect at the WAF level so we don't have to kind of it come down to the Drupal site? So this is our group, our university as a whole, learning about the tools that we have on hand. I also started looking into advanced bot protection, which was another thing for them to try to sell us more features, which we can't afford. The CDN capabilities that came with our WAF were a little bit of a black box. We actually ended up asking them to turn it off for us because in addition to the varnish, we still have pages not updating and driving our end users crazy. This is also, the WAF was tied to SSL, so we all had to make sure the keys were there, move the private keys over. Just a big headache. In Pantheon, this is all simplified. We are paying for their AG CDN. It's simple, it's managed, there's a ticket process. I've had to reach out to them to ask how can we update these bot annoyances. And what I really liked is I got a conversation with our support person. He said, are you sure you want to do this? Here's some of the ramifications. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So we were able to do a decent back and forth on finding some rules that would actually fit our unique need. And at the end of the day, it's reducing our requests to our cybersecurity group, our infrastructure, and our networking. So those individuals get to go do what they work on best, and not have to be bothered by our group. All right, now to my favorite part. Our current tooling. So I am a huge fan of RoboTaskRunner. I don't know if a lot of you are using it. Well, I know you all are using it. So if you use Terminus, that's a RoboTaskRunner. If you use Drush, it's also a RoboTaskRunner. The nice thing, if you take and build your own RoboTaskRunner, you can get the same command line interface questions for yourself. So I'm able to build in our institutional rules into simple command line code. So I can hand off my suite, my framework off to Chaz and off to Mario, and they can actually assign domain names through Pantheon and also on the other host as well. It's agnostic. But it basically builds all the rules that you need to basically run all your sites. I got this idea from Martin Dorison back in 2023 at the DrupalCon. I highly recommend listening to his talk. And then as I got deeper into understanding, notice that there's a common name on Drush, Terminus, and Robo, and that's Greg Anderson, who is at Pantheon. And then I also called out DDev. The one thing I like about DDev is that you're able to just make these commands super simple. So I have a wrapper basically that says, vendor, bin, robo, whatever my robo command is, turn into just DDev pull site, and then we can pull the site down to our DDev environment. And then also with bash scripting. There's some other really cool GitHub actions that I do. So I'm going to talk about a migration. I've set it up to actually run in GitHub. Started it first at the local level, but I like to be able to set something, forget it, and go do more development work. And the last thing, I highlight this, the multi-dev for the win. We were using Tugboat to kind of get there, but just our ability to be able to hand off a site to our QA group that is the actual site it's a game changer. So here is the meat and potatoes that really pushed everything. So this was a 2-month engagement where 2 to 3 months, where only 40% of my effort was actually able to do this migration piece. Because I had to deal with the troubleshooting, had to deal with some other stuff in our regular development. The tools that I've created through the scripting allows for development in both hosts. So we're not completely migrated over at the moment, but we're still able to do host first and then move over to the Pantheon code base and make the minor changes, and everything works simultaneously and seamless between the two. I use parallels in Terminus. This blew my mind. March 3rd, I created 174 sites using the Terminus command with parallel in 36 minutes. I then was on a roll and like, okay, well, can I actually do the migration? So it's a little bit of a script using some, originally it was just some rsync. And then this is after I forgot that I'd moved all my rclone code, and that was in a different branch, and I started the actual migration. So it's a little misleading. I used Terminus and rsync to begin with for the 172 sites in less than a day. It was about 6 hours. We're talking database and files. Set it, forget it, went down, made food for my family, came up, and then everything had been migrated over. Then realized, oh no, I'm on the wrong branch. I'm supposed to be using rclone because I just learned about it. So then I reran the rclone for subsequent batch migrations. The key thing on this one, though, it's a little it doesn't make for the greatest of stat, is I'm just doing a sync. So if the file's already there, it's not going to bring it over. But if it has changed, it'll bring it over. But that whole process for all 172 sites takes 70 minutes. What? So the same technique is going to be also what we're going to do to actually move the code from dev to test and then to live to get this all finalized. And then the last piece is the DNS. This is the part that's going to take forever. And then again, it's because I'm relying on our networking group to give me all the information. So, yay. So this leads to, I think it's just better internal tooling. On the other host side, they had APIs, they had additional tools. It's great. I still use those, but there was additional workarounds I had to do. There was additional steps I had to make to change format. Specifically, I would get like the big long line of text and have to do find this particular regex screen in here so I can get the path to where this particular piece is, and then I can extract that database and then import it into our DDev. The steps between jobs weren't seamless. It was kind of hard to automate. I'm not able to use parallelization. And the documentation was unclear on our product. So getting a list of all our sites was unclear, especially at the beginning of the product. And I found it actually easier. I found digging through the server at some point a JSON file that had actually a list of all of our files, or all of our sites. It's one file, all of our sites. Like, oh, this is what I've been looking for all this time. So then I built into DDev a script to grab that, pull that down, and then I built all my DDev commands based off of that. In Pantheon, I don't need to do that. There's Terminus commands. List my site. I can grab it from a tag. Okay, grab these, and then I can build out my commands on what the following steps are. Are we releasing this to dev? Am I assigning a domain? Am I removing a domain? Am I adding a tag? It's all run through this whole robo process that I worked through. The Terminus output is easily formatted. There's better documentation across the board, and I drop down, and that parallelization is a game changer. 36 minutes, 174 sites. I get stuck with that. Then I can also easily string tasks together in GitHub Actions. Do I need to? No, but I like the fact that we have GitHub Actions. We can use it, and I can just push everything off onto a runner. Then I don't have to think about it. The other piece, we eliminated approximately 52 engineering days a year, and I've highlighted earlier about our deploy process. We kind of recreated our problem. Every 2 weeks, there's a 4 to 8 hour release troubleshooting period. This is partially due, and I pull out that post-deployment process, but part of our CI/CD workflow, you need to see the changes in the host environment sometimes, a lot of the time. And just they are mixed matches between them, and in some cases, one developer will do one thing, and once it's up there, you realize, oh, we should have caught this earlier, and we're now running into a challenge. So this was a rinse and repeat every 2 weeks where we're doing releases. We had 4 to 8 hours that we had to dig through our code and find out what did we do wrong and why this isn't working. So we live in multi-dev now. Release-related issues are exposed before ever even being pushed into the multi-dev itself. And then our CI/CD befriends failing test code, so this is just great. And then I had time finally to actually take some of our deployment steps and make our own custom drush command so that I don't have to worry about some of these steps. You can't really see it there, but that's a Teams message that once everything's pushed up to the code, I do a little cloud with throwing up rainbows, and it's unicorn and rainbows for when everything works. Tying back into our release process, with 85% reduction in deployment downtime. Tie back, the whole process took 3+ hours. During that process, I would get these monitored synthetic monitors sending us team messages saying, hey, your site's down. So we have about 60 or 70 of those as this whole process went through. I had stakeholders that were paying attention to that, and they got annoyed. And then it gets to the point sometimes that, it's the boy who cries wolf. If you keep on seeing this, you're not going to know when it's an actual thing that you need to be worried about. In Pantheon, I paralyzed it. It's batches of 50. I've done this multiple times now. It's 10 to 15 minutes updates at the site level. That's the user won't be able to log in during that time frame, but not compared to the 3 hours previous. I have to tie this back into DrupalCon, the Higher Ed Summit in 2023. There's another Pantheon talk. Seth Hill was here talking about parallelization. So I just want to call everybody back to that. And then finally, Danny Pfeiffer at the end of the year talked about this as well. And so there's another YouTube video that you can watch about this whole parallelization process, as well as some GitHub actions. So our users are not interrupted anymore. Our anonymous users, we're no longer getting these synthetic monitors. Notices that things are going down. So yay. Then we're on to our 92% faster issue resolution. I was not happy with the support that we were getting. A lot of the support tickets would be the following day. I felt like I needed to write War and Peace of the documentation to support what we were identifying. And truthfully, sometimes, yeah, it's on us too, because like our WAF was complicated and complicating matters. And sometimes I would start closing tickets because I just didn't want them. I don't have a resolution, but I think I can find it on my own. I don't necessarily need to rely on the support. And sometimes the support was not familiar with our product. And it became just a practice to try to solve our issue without actually reaching out. It has been light and day. During this whole migration progress, I tested all of them, Slack, email, ticket. Did not do the phone because if it's an emergency, we've made a mistake. I don't want to pick up that phone. And then on the bonus, if you reach out on Slack, you might actually get an answer from Greg. I thought that was kind of cool. I got responses within at least 2 hours. I get actionable items before the end of the day. If it's the end of the day when I reach out, I'm getting the following day some action. And if they do reference existing documentation, they're actually looking at our code and making references to our code. So I have not been dissatisfied as of yet. I know I'm getting really close to the end of this. So thank you greatly for listening today. Just had to throw in the Pantheon in Italy. It's beautiful. I also want to give a call out to Kevin Rainin. We were able to reach out to him. He gave us some clues on Git clues and some other areas that I had some challenges with. I know some of you talked to Chaz today. Our storybook instance is up there. I used to have a podcast back in the day. I did not like that experience. I've decreased my web presence. But you can find me on Drupal and on GitHub. So, and then feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to share a lot of the DDev stuff, a lot of our robo code. I want to share this. Unfortunately, we do have to put everything kind of behind. So if I can get an idea of if people are interested, I can find out what I can rip out and then put into something that can be open. So anyway, thank you.
I love all our cheering because I don't know if the community summit's still going on, but if it is, we're definitely winning. Okay, so I know it's been a long day. We're getting close to the end of the day. We have one more activity for the group. It's going to be a panel discussion with all our lightning talk speakers, or whichever ones of them want to come up. We'll pull up some chairs. We only have 2 microphones. So let's give it a round of applause for all our speakers today. Maybe put the chairs out front here.
Oh, yeah, that could work.
Yeah, come grab it. Grab a chair. Actually 6.
Oh, no, 6. You're right.
Where's the conference photographers? This is where you need to be. All right, so I'm going to help moderate this panel. None of you have to look at me. I won't make any faces. You can look at the crowd. As us organizers were coming up with what we wanted to ask our speakers for a panel, we discussed that there's a lot of challenges in higher ed, especially right now, right? From financial, political, technical challenges for our students and what they can do. So we wanted everyone here to understand that you're not working on those challenges individually. We're all dealing with the same things. And so we thought we could ask our panelists here, our speakers. I'll start with this first question, and any one of you can jump in and take it on. Is what's a current challenge your team is facing, and how are you addressing it? Tina, some of us. There you go.
There we go. Okay. I think for us, and you heard me talk this morning, for us, we don't really have a strategic plan at ASU when it comes to AI. So we really believe in doing little innovation centers across our community. And so we are now, we did an AI innovation challenge using ChatGPT. We have over 400 projects in the works. And so it's just difficult to keep our arms around it and about like who's doing what, because it's great to have things decentralized because then people have ownership of what they're doing and people always own what they help to create. But at the same time, it's like it's running wild, and how do we kind of get it back to where it's a little bit more centralized? And I don't think that's going to happen with us because innovation is expected at every corner of our university. And so it's really just kind of getting our arms around what are people doing, because there's so many things happening and sometimes we just can't keep track of all of it.
Nobody else wants to talk about challenges?
Everybody else is in a perfect environment. I guess I'm
so.
the only one
guess
that's
so.
not. Yeah.
All right, then I'll ask. I'm going to pick someone's name, so you have to talk. Let's see. Michael, what is something that's upcoming in Drupal, or what you're doing with Drupal that you're excited about?
I would definitely say Experience Builder. So we are utilizing Layout Builder right now, and we identify some challenges that come with it, some user experience challenges and some site building challenges. And our hope is that Experience Builder would help address those. So I'm attending all of those talks the next coming days. So very excited for that.
Let me ask a follow-up. What challenges did you run into with Layout Builder?
My colleague Dave over here could probably talk at length about that, but the storage of the data in Layout Builder is definitely an issue that we've run into. Reusable blocks being the main source of most of our bugs that we run into is definitely a challenge. General UX things too, of like, being able to duplicate blocks is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world, and things like that. So.
I'll pass it on to following up that any of the other speakers here, are you dealing with any changes to your content editor or content creation process?
This is a shy group.
You have a sidebar conversation?
Well, it's kind of our talk, so yeah.
All right, then I'm going to ask Joe a question. With the changing landscape of distributions and recipes and all that, and people needing to move to security maintained versions of Drupal, what are some challenges you see in the higher ed landscape with being able to do that?
Wow, that's a complicated question. I mean, I guess it'd probably take me a minute to think about how to tie all those things together. But I do think that, you know, unless more changes are made in, like, to Drupal core along the lines of the things we were talking about in our talk today related to being able to manage configuration at scale across a lot of different sites, there are potential security implications for that, for institutions like ours, not being able to kind of, you know, enact or like apply a governance policy to a large number of websites easily can be a big problem for things like accessibility or security. So hopefully, you know, the next phase of the distributions and recipes initiative, maybe we'll see more adoption of some of the features that institutions, like higher education institutions like ours, need as part of that.
All right. How about, let's go with Nathan. What with the work you're doing with Harvard, what's been the challenge for helping them move to the Drupal 10 world?
A lot of it is just scale. So I think, I mean, that's a whole separate talk, which maybe we'll give next year. But to kind of the brief summary is like we're moving off of Open Scholar, which is kind of like a customized Drupal installation. I think we were starting from like 12,000 websites on that. So a lot of those, thankfully, like we're retiring most of those. I think like our final number is going to be closer between 2,000 to 2,500. But as you can imagine, the scale of that is just absolutely enormous. And, you know, I think we're about a little over 1,000 sites in now. We have a process, but a lot of that is just kind of figuring out how do you kind of move things over at that scale. So, you know, it's a huge team effort. We have like a group of product owners on the Harvard side that are managing communications with the client and doing a great job of like, hey, like, you know, scheduling like, okay, your site's going to be scheduled to get migrated over at this time, and kind of managing all the communications related to that, setting expectations about what's going to get migrated, what's not, what things do you maybe have to clean up manually on your side. We have our dev team that's doing like scripted migrations. We're like moving over, you know, 100-ish sites every 2 weeks. We have our QA team who's kind of doing like a content smoothing exercise. So every time we do those 100 sites we've got, you know, 7-8 people that are, you know, reviewing those to make sure things got migrated over properly, and for like larger department and like flagship sites doing additional smoothing on them. So a lot of that, it's just scale. And, you know, I think we have a good process going on that now, but it's just, we have to get all of those over. I think, you know, before the end of the year when Acquia extended Drupal 7 support ends, and it's, yeah, I think we're on a good track, but it was definitely a lot to kind of work through what that process would be.
Yeah, and just to add to that, a big part of it is also governance, which is something we're still evolving. But just to go from, I wouldn't say it was quite the Wild West, but people had a lot of flexibility. And that flexibility came with challenges around accessibility, security, and things that Nathan and I were talking about earlier. And so just the governance aspect of it to help people understand, like, okay, you have a little less flexibility than you did before, but you know, your site is more secure. you're less at risk for someone showing up and being like, you're not accessible. And so moving people into this new world, and again, at scale, we're like, I remember back 18 months ago, we're like, we think we can do, like 80 of these, a week, and to be like, oh yeah, no, we do 110 if we need to. But just a big part of it is non-technical, and just, working with stakeholders around the university, so.
Thank you. From that, I want to ask, and this could be for anyone here, because I think we all deal with this when we make changes to our higher ed websites or platforms for authoring experiences. How do you make sure you're communicating that out in a way that other people understand and that the people who need to know about those things know about it?
So for us, when we make updates to our distribution, we'll do a release notes, and then we'll also do a newsletter to all of the people that are within our distribution or using our distribution. And we can run reports to get emails addresses for all those people to put in our mailing list, and then tell everybody, we're updating the news content type to add a reference field, for example. And they can read that or not. We can't force it down their throat. I mean, we have so many changes all the time that, we have to prioritize what are the big changes, what are the small changes.
Anyone else want to?
So yeah, we do things like that. We have a web working group where we're engaging with the schools who partner with us. And so that's a source of information in terms of like what are high level needs they have. And so at the same time, every time we meet with them every 2 weeks, I'm sharing, nope, these are the release notes. This is what we're currently working on to make sure there's education at that level. And this next part, I can't speak to what people have at their different schools, but we have a whole change management process at Harvard. And so that's something which we are tapping into more and more, simply because of the fact that there are structures around like the help desk and other things like that. So as we're doing releases, which can not necessarily be disruptive from like, we want to avoid like anything going wrong during a release, but just that even the process, like, hey, I can't edit my site. It's like, oh, did you read the newsletter that went out that said that there's a deployment at this time? So just to lean into the structures that already exist, and that's something that we're doing more, so.
For us, we have a bunch of different Slack channels. One of us called DT Leads. I'm not quite sure what DT stands for. It might be digital transformation, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so we have several sites. So our developers and people that are working on new stuff, like we send it out to several different groups so that they're aware of these changes. Because like you guys, we have changes all the time. And Slack is great.
Awesome. All right. So this is going to be my last question, but I'm going to have each one of you answer it. So we've all been here together. Right? Today, we all have common challenges and goals and things we want to learn about. So I'm going to ask everyone here, for the rest of your time here at DrupalCon, what's something you're focused on learning about and bringing back to your institution? I guess let's start, we'll start with Joe and we'll move down the line.
So, I think it was Mike mentioned, I'm excited to learn more about Experience Builder. We use paragraphs currently, but a lot of the reasons we hesitated to switch to Layout Builder, I'm kind of curious to see where things are at with that. I'm also, sorry, I'm doing two. I'm also wanting to spend some time this conference learning more about single directory components and kind of figuring out how we can implement those for our institution.
Well, for me, since my lane is really marketing and communications, I always love meeting people from other universities, and not just marketing and communications people, but people that are in this room that might not have that as a title, but just interested in how they use AI and how it can be used more effectively.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Joe. I want to learn about Experience Builder and SDC. I'm pretty excited about the new navigation system with Layout Builder as well.
Yeah, I'd say AI is one that I'm kind of interested in looking into. It's an area that I've kind of looked at with optimistic skepticism, I'd say. And so I'm kind of really interested in kind of seeing how other people are using it and, you know, where are the really practical use cases where it adds a lot of value and isn't being used as a gimmick, and just kind of trying to understand both for like, you know, from our development teams and for like our clients, where are places where that really adds value.
AI.
I mentioned Experience Builder before, but I'll also say just generally like how to improve authoring experiences, whether through UX or is it through AI. We are going to put a lot of focus on our platform into authoring experience, so I want to see how other people utilize that.
Awesome. All right, let's give our speakers another round of applause. Woo! Thank you all. All right, before we wrap up, if you can stick with me for like 3 more minutes. Okay. So we've tried to make the organizers, again, Beth, Megan, Tyler, raise your hand. You know, I just, for some reason, get to be the face, but we all worked on this together. We would appreciate if you could fill out a brief survey on how today was, how we can make it better next year. We want to do that so that if we're the team that does it next year, we can do it. And if not, we can hand these results over to the team who does do it.
Sorry, the mic for a sec. I just want to do a quick survey about migration. I wanted a show of hands. I got a couple questions. How many people here needed to do a migration from like D7 to D8 or whatever? Okay. How many people have started and are nowhere near completed? How many people are halfway? Okay. So, and then how many people are actually completed their migration? Okay, wow, okay. And then keep your hands up. How many took you over a year? How many people took you 2 years? And how many people took 3 or more years? And then, I'm sorry, I just put my hand up. It took us 3 or more years to finish the migration. Cool, thank you very much.
That's different than this survey, just to let you know. But that's Tyler, one of the organizers as well. If you want to continue the conversation, hopefully you reached your goal of making a new contact who you can talk to the rest of the conference and something to bring back. But there's other higher ed web development conferences around. There's Digital Collegium, which is in September. There's New England Drupal Camp, which will have a higher ed summit. I help with that one as well. And if you're not in it, there's the higher ed Drupal Slack at edu.slack.com, so you should join the group there. Thank you, Michael! Thank you for being so engaged for the day. As you leave, our sponsor, Evolving Web, has a gift for you. I don't know if they have one for everybody, so yes, they do. They have like a what's it called? A Buddha board? I forget what it is. Boogie board, electronic tablet. So